Today we're going to go over how to install a web host manager onto a DigitalOcean server, and we're going to hook up a domain to it using Cloudflare. So hop in, we're going to go right to digitalocean.com. If you don't already have an account, go ahead and click sign up. I'm going to log in as my own account. So once you log in, it's going to drop you on a page. If you just created an account, this will all be blank, but for me, I have a few things in here. And the first thing you want to do is create a project. On the left-hand side, you're going to see projects. We'll click new project, and we'll give this one. So projects are great. You can organize your clients or different types of servers that you have underneath it. Essentially, it's a container folder that you can stick a bunch of servers or whatever you might need in there and keep them all related to a specific project. For this, we're just going to do a tutorial name. So we'll call it WHM tutorial. And as a description, learning how to install. And then for a purpose, we'll just do educational purposes. I'm not really sure why they need that. Create project. And you'll see it appear. Once you click create project, you'll see it appear on the left-hand side. Right now it's asking me if I want to move any resources in there. I'm going to hit skip since we're starting from scratch. Okay, so now that we're in our project that we just created, we're going to want to create a server or what it's known as a droplet on DigitalOcean. So we'll click create droplet. Web host manager cPanel works. It works on CentOS, and you need to use version 7. 8 is not supported currently. So make sure you use CentOS version 7. That's important. And then you want to scroll down and choose your plan. So the minimum requirements for the WHM cPanel server would be, I don't remember the exact requirements, but this is the bare minimum that you can use. For the sake of the tutorial, I'm going to just bump one up. And you can choose here, your solid state drive. You can use a regular one. It changes the price. I'm just going to stick with a lot of the basics, but you feel free to choose whatever you decide. Block storage is here. So if you choose this plan, for example, and you're going to have a lot of sites, some of them might be bigger, you're going to, wow, I need to use more than 60 gigabytes. Well, if that's the case, but you don't want to bump it up here, you don't need 4 gigabytes of CPUs, etc., like that. You can add a block storage on here as well. It's $10 for 100 gigabytes. So it would basically add, on top of the 60, you would add an extra 100 gigabytes. You can do a custom here. Say you only need 20 more gigabytes. That's $2 a month. I'm going to just leave this blank. We don't need any block storage. And I think the plans are, for the general population, are pretty good. 50 gigabytes for this plan here, that's quite a bit of storage. You're likely not going to need it, but if you do, it's always available here. So, and if you click on this, it's not immediately apparent how to get rid of it, but you can scroll down and click remove volume. So if you change your mind after you click on it. Here you can choose your location of where your server is going to be. So if most of your web traffic is going to be in London or San Francisco, etc. I'm in New York area. I'm going to stick with New York and scroll down here. So here we have SSH keys and authentication. So there's an easy way. You could always just click here and enter a password to secure your domain. But we're going to do it the right way. We're going to go straight through with an SSH key, and I'll show you how to create a new SSH key. So select SSH, click new SSH key. Now what we're going to use, if you're on Windows, this is more of a Windows tutorial. There's you can use other methods if you're on a Mac. But for Windows, what we're going to do is go to search for PuTTY. I believe it's putty.org. And here you can download PuTTY. This is a tool that will generate this key for you. So when you're here, you can click download and install it. I've already got it installed. Once it's installed, you can do a search, type in PuTTY, and PuTTY will come up. But what you actually want to do, PuTTY is something else. What you need for this is PuTTY-Gen. That will also install once you install the PuTTY up here. PuTTY-Gen will also sideload. So you want to load that up. And here you get a generalized, let's close that. And here you get a generalized open area. And down below, you want to click generate. This will generate your key. Leave it as RSA. So we'll go ahead, and it's saying move your mouse. Moving the mouse helps it, apparently it creates more randomness. And here's your key that you need. What you want to do is you want to copy this key straight from this box. Right click, copy. This is the public key. It is different than this public key down here. This is a different format. And what you want to do is paste this that you just copied in this box into this SSH key content box here. Click paste. Name, we're going to call it. Okay, so what you want to do before you close anything is you want to save the private key. It's going to ask you if you want to do a passphrase or protect it. You can add a passphrase here if you want. You can skip it or you can add a passphrase. We're just going to skip it for now. Do you want to create this without it? Yes. Now it's going to ask me where you want to save it. I'm going to save it to my desktop, and I'm going to call it, let's see, WHM tutorial private key. And you don't need to add the extension if you just type in the name that you want it so you can remember for future time, and just hit save, and it'll save it to my desktop. And for example, if you close this after you create that key and you forgot to paste it in here, so we'll just do that right now. We'll close it. When you open it back up, the PuttyGen, it's going to want to create a new one. If you lost that, you can go ahead and click load. And here, if you click the key that we just created, the private key, it will auto-generate your public key again for you. So if you ever lose that key and you still have the private key saved, you can always reload it. Okay, so moving on from that, we're going to hit add SSH key. And now here, you'll see it appear down here, WHM tutorial, that's what I called it. So that's the key that we'll be using to log into the server. Here you can enable backups. What this will do will back up the entire droplet. So if you have a lot of websites on here, etc., it's going to back every single one of those up in one instance, and you could always roll back to a previous date, which would also roll back all of the websites on this account that we've created. So just keep that in mind. If you have one client that may have made an update a day ago and you want to roll back a few days, it's going to roll everyone back. But it's great to have. If anything goes wrong, you're going to want to have these backups. It's an extra $360 a month. Monitoring, it enables additional droplet metrics. I just enable these two, IPv6. Just, you never know if you want to use it in the future for any of these things. And I just leave user data blank. And down here, you'll have the one droplet. Let's keep it at one. And here you want to give it a host name. And let's think ahead what we want to call our server. So when we log into the web host manager, how do we want to access that? The default way is to access it through the IP address, but we can also access it through a domain. So you want to enter a fully qualified domain in here. And if you plan on using the domain for an actual website, what you want to do is add the same domain, but you can add a subdomain in front of it. So I'm going to use, so if I want a website, tommcmanus.com, I'll still be able to use this website and access WHM using server. If you don't want a website, you don't need the server part, but it won't work otherwise if you do want a website. It has to be an unused domain. So let's create the droplet. Once you click that, you're going to see the status bar here. And this is relatively pretty quick. And here you can see some details about it. It's 2 gigabytes, 60 gigabyte disk space, 2 gigabytes of RAM, and the server location. And now once that's created, it's going to show you the server IP address. So what we want to do now is we're going to go to cPanel and we're going to set up an account so that when we install cPanel Web Host Manager, it's going to ask us to log in, and we'll already have an account created that we can log into. So cPanel.net. So I've already created an account. I'll just log into mine, but what you want to do is create your own account. And once you create the account, it's going to have you on this page here where you can view your orders and licenses, etc., etc. So once you've created your account, you can go ahead and go back to your DigitalOcean account. This is how you're going to actually log into the server using this IP address. We're going to log in using PuTTY. And this time we don't want PuTTY Gen. We're just going to use regular PuTTY. And this will have a few things that I've already set up, but we'll set this one up from scratch. So we'll do right here is where you paste the IP address. So we'll paste that in here. And then you want to make sure you add your SSH key. So once this is here, you can go down to connection, and then there's SSH here. If you open up that, go to auth. And here is where you can select where your SSH key, the private key that you saved earlier. What that does is it tells the server, here's the private key, basically your password, and it connects to the public key that you gave your server earlier that we inputted into that field. So we'll click browse, and here we have the private key that we created earlier. We're going to select that. I recommend you save it somewhere other than your desktop. You don't want to lose this private key. So once you hit open, you're going to see the path here. And I recommend you scroll back up, go to session. We're going to, right here, you have saved sessions. We'll call this WHM tutorial. And you can save this. So next time you log in, you won't have to enter the IP address and then add your authentication key. So once we hit save, you're going to see it appear down here. And next time you load up PuTTY, you're going to see these lists, and you can just either click load or just double click on it. I'm going to double click on it to open the PuTTY window here. It's going to give you a message saying it's never seen this before. Do you trust it? Yes, we trust it, so hit accept. And then here, it's going to ask you what to log in as. We're going to log in as the root user. And once we hit enter, it's going to take the private key that we saved to our computer, and it's going to compare it to the public key that we uploaded earlier. And once it authenticates it, we're going to be logged in. Essentially, that file is our password. So once we type in root, we're going to hit enter, and it's going to log us in. We're now logged into the server with this IP address. And then at the time of recording this, we had a little situation with the SQL server with cPanel. So I'm going to pull that up right now. It might be all set by the time you're watching this video. If so, you can go ahead and skip ahead. But if we go to this website, a couple days ago, they had a situation where the MySQL repo has expired. It prevents the installation of an important package. And cPanel has a workaround for us down below. And since this is a new installation, they give us the command that we can type into the PuTTY window right here. I'm going to copy this. And then when you go back to the PuTTY window, when you can right click, and that's the same thing as pasting. When you right click, it's going to paste that command that we just copied. You don't need to right click and do anything else. Just the right click alone will paste it. And then if you hit enter, it's not going to look like it's done anything, but as long as you see this next line down here appear, that workaround is all set. We wanted to make sure we did it before we ran the actual WHM installer. So we're good here. I'm going to close this window. And then I'm going to paste these commands in the video description, so you can copy and paste as you go as well. I'm going to grab the installation command that's provided from cPanel, and I'm going to paste that in here. And once I paste that in, it's going to actually run the install. And I recommend maybe go and grab yourself a cup of coffee, because this could take about 5 to 10 minutes. And while that's running, we can go ahead and go to Cloudflare and register our domain. I don't have this domain yet, so I'm going to log in and actually purchase the domain. So let's go to cloudflare.com. I already have an account, so I'm going to log in. And here on the left-hand side, Your Cloudflare now allows you to register your own domains here. Before, you used to have to buy it somewhere else and transfer it in. That's no longer the case. You can actually register right through Cloudflare. So if you click here on the left-hand side, sometimes I have it zoomed in, so it's going to be condensed a little bit. But if you click register, you'll come here and you'll see manage transfer by domains. Let's buy a domain. And the domain that I wanted to use was my name. We'll just type it in. Oh, tom-mcmanus.com. And when you do search, you're going to see it highlighted. If you type in something that's already taken, for example, Tom without the dash, it won't be a large like this. So you want to make sure it's large in case does some other recommendation you don't notice. Make sure you're getting the large one. So we're going to buy this for $8.57. I'm just going to do 1 year. Click continue. Fill this all out. Since it's already my account, it knows my information already. We'll click continue. You can leave auto renew on and all that. Click submit. It's going to renew at the same price per year. That's what's great about Cloudflare. It's a good price, a couple bucks cheaper than everywhere else. So now we have my domain registered. I'm going to zoom out a little bit. So on the left-hand side, we're going to use the DNS option. So if it's closed like mine, you can just hover over it. You'll see it pop out. I'll click DNS, and it's going to be all empty. It shows me the name servers for the Cloudflare account. So let's go ahead and start inserting some records while this is still going. So a couple records that we're going to need is some A records. So we're going to do add a record. We're going to add an A record, and we'll just use @ for root. And I'm going to create a website, tommcmanus.com, with this, so I can actually point this to the IP address. This is our server IP. That's what we want to point this to. Paste this in here. And since this is going to be a regular website that I'm going to use, I can leave it proxied and just hit save. Now, if you're not going to use this for a website, you can skip this part. If you did the subdomain like I'm doing, you're going to want to add the subdomain as well, add record, and call it server. Once you enter server, you can see up here the domain that it's actually putting together. So it's the subdomain server.tommcmanus.com. And then we're going to put IP address here. And for this one, you want to unproxy it. You don't want the web host manager to be proxied in any way. It's going to break it. So hit save. And then a few other things that we're going to need in the future are going to be more A records. So we'll do NS1, name server 1, paste that in, and deproxy. And repeat the same process for these few other things that we need, NS2. Add record, we'll do webmail, IP address, delete that. Add cPanel, IP address. And we'll add www. And since www is going to be for just the regular website, I'm going to leave that one proxied as well. So these are some of the things that we're going to be using in the future. So these are the entries that you want to have in place once you purchase your domain. And this is still going, so I'm going to, so this is all set. Okay, so now that we have the DNS set up on our Cloudflare, we can go ahead and access our WHM account using the new settings that we have set up in here. So we also, if you are not able to set up your domain name first, you're able to access the WHM account through the IP address, which is this one. Or if you want to go to the, Digitalocean, you can copy the IP address here with a few additional steps. If you already have the domain, you can just skip ahead. This shouldn't take too long. I'll just show you how to log in with the IP address. So we'll copy the IP address. We'll go over, we'll paste it in here. So from here, you want to do a colon 2087. And when you hit enter for this, it will take you to your WHM login. Now, if you already registered your domain like me, you can also do your domain /WHM, and it will have the same effect. It's going to, since it's not set up in the back end yet, it will take you to the same exact location as the IP address. So both of those are working pretty good right now. So let's go ahead and log in with our root account and enter your password that you created earlier in the account setup and click login. So here it'll bring you into a general cPanel license agreement and general setup. So go ahead and read all this. Click agree to all. And here now it's asking you for a login to your cPanel store. You can get started with a free cPanel trial, or if you've already purchased yourself a license, it will show up in here as well. So I'm going to click login. It's going to ask you if you want to allow access. Click yes. And it's going to set you up with a 15-day free trial. And if you want, you can go ahead and attach later on a purchased version. So now we'll move on to server setup. Here it's going to ask you just the contact email address. We'll just use my account, my normal email. And now it's going to ask you name servers. So here is where we want to change the name servers that we added earlier into here. And if you didn't register your domain yet, you still want to, you can always change this later, but it's still good to do it here, what you plan to be purchasing and doing in the future. So we'll add it with NS1 and the new domain that we have. And we'll do NS2 with the same domain. And here we have those set up here, NS1 and NS2. They're pointing to our server IP address. And we'll click next. So here we are. You're going to see up at the top, most likely, you'll see reboot your server to apply software updates. There's a few notifications up top here. And down here, you can create a new account, which would create your cPanel account. And we'll go over that in later videos, how to create a new account, maybe set up a WordPress website. Here's where you would view all the accounts that you had set up. Since we haven't created any, there's none here. So if we go back on the left top corner here, this slides out a search bar, which is very handy, or you can just scroll down, but there's a lot of options here. So the first thing you want to do when you log in is set up the general setup here. And if you do a search up here for basic web host manager, it'll bring it right up for you. But if you don't do the search, you can find it in here. So we'll do the search and click on this. So here it's going to have a generalized setup for the entire WHM account. I recommend you add your email to the first 3 lines here. You're going to want to scroll down and check your basic config here and make sure that the IP address is correct. You can just go back to your Digitalocean account and confirm that. If it's not correct, just make sure you update it to your Digitalocean IP address. And then what you want to do is scroll down to the bottom, and here's where it shows the name server information. So if you didn't enter this earlier, you can always come to this area and enter your name servers here as well. And I'll click Save Changes. So that's all set up. And one thing I forgot to mention is we should be adding our domain from Cloudflare into our droplet as well, or into our project as well. So here you can click the 3 dots to the right side of your droplet and you'll see Add Domain. Once you click that, if you have already other domains associated with your account, they'll show up here. Here we're going to add the new domain that we just registered. And it's going to ask you which account you want. Make sure that it's the correct one. and we'll click add domains. And you want to do your root domain and not the server domain. So here now it does an automatic name server records and things like that for you. And we want to add a couple other records of our own. So up here we are under add an A record. So if you are clicking around, you want to make sure you're back on A record. We're going to add a host name, and we're going to add the name server records NS1. And here it's showing. And we'll point it to our server, which is this server. If you only have one, you just won't see the list. And click create record. We'll do the same for NS2. And select the correct server, create record. Okay, and we're going to also add server, server.domain.com, add record. So now we have those 3 new records here added. Now what you want to do is head back over to WHM. We'll clear this search out and do a search for change host name. Host name is one word. We'll click on that. And down here, you can scroll, and here's what we're seeing right now at the top here, 206.1, a bunch of numbers, and a randomized domain that cPanel has created for us. So instead of using that, we're going to use our own domain and put that here. We're going to say server.ourdomain and click change. You'll see it doing a little bit of work in the back end here. And now it's going to recommend, it says you should probably add an A entry for your host name if you don't have one. So we'll click on that. You might get this, your connection is not private, because we are changing it. So we'll click proceed. And we'll just make sure that this IP address is correct. A lot of times I like to just copy it, and we can just do a control find, control F, and type it in. You'll see everything highlighted so you know it's correct. So that looks good. And once you confirm the IP address there, you can go ahead and move back into Cloudflare, and then we'll go to SSL TLS. We're going to go into the overview section, and here we have it set to flexible. We can change this to full. And now it's encrypting end-to-end using self-signed certificate on the server. So now that we've done all that, we should be able to access the WHM account using our server domain account /WHM. And it should be a secure connection. So we'll go ahead and open up a new tab, and we're going to type in server.ourdomain/WHM. So here we are. We're accessing the WHM account through an SSL. We're accessing the WHM account through our domain. And we can just, it's going to need us to log back in again because it's now using a separate connection. So we'll do our login and password. And there we are. But now that everything is set up, we can go ahead and do the server reboot to apply software updates. And this will actually take some time. It's going to reboot the system, so you won't be able to access the back end until it's complete. So if you click proceed, you'll see this reboot is now in progress. And if you try to access any location in the WHM account, you're going to just see the spinning wheel. So we'll open one in a new tab, and you'll just see nothing loading here. So once it's complete rebooting, the site will work again. This page does not automatically reload. So you'll see a reboot is now in progress indefinitely. So what you want to do is keep on testing. You can go ahead and refresh this page if you want. And once the page loads back in, the server reboot will be all set, and this message will go away. If we refresh this page, it should say what we originally saw. So that was a pretty quick reboot. The more websites you have on the server is going to slow the reboot down. But currently right now, those alerts are now gone and everything should be all set. So next we're going to want to protect our WHM server with shell fork bomb protection. This stops people from running processes against your server and using up all the resources. So if you go up to the search bar on the left and type in shell or fork bomb or anything like that, it'll come right up. And here's a little description. It says fork bomb protection denies users who have terminal access the ability to use all resources on the servers. This helps prevent a server crash by not allowing unlimited resources. So all you have to do here is click enable protection and you're all set with that. It's now enabled. So next we want to install additional security, firewall security. If you do a paste in here for it, it's currently not installed. It's called CSF, Config Server Security and Firewall. The way to install that onto your server is going back to the PuTTY window and opening up the connection to your server through PuTTY. Click load and open. We'll log in as root. Okay, now that we're logged in, there are some commands that we can run through that will install the CSF that we need. The first thing you want to do is make sure you're in the root directory. So if you do cd /root, you can make sure you're in the root location on the server. So next you want to paste in the command that I'll have available to you in the video notes. This is the command to download the CSF package. So if we paste that in, hit enter, you can see it downloaded the package. So next we want to run a command that's going to decompress the download. So if we paste this in, this is going to decompress and hit enter. And that's all set. So now we can go and check the directory. We'll do cd /CSF. And now we're in the CSF directory. And then we can paste in the install command for it, which would be right here. And then hit enter. And you'll see it run through and begin installing. It says installation complete. So now that it's complete, we can go back to the web host manager and close this window. You can type exit or just X. And now if we refresh this page and type in firewall, you'll see under plugins here, you'll see config server, security, and firewall. This is what we just installed. And now we can set it up. First, you'll see these first two warnings here. We can go through and take care of these. So since this is a longer page, we can just type in firewall config, and it'll bring us down to what we need. So here it is. Once we click on this button, it opens up that section. And here you'll see the testing flag. So to get it out of test mode, we can click the off button. They give you a warning here to let you know, make sure you know that it is working properly before you turn testing mode off, and this will enable it. So once we've turned testing off, we can search for restrict _ syslog. And it'll bring you down to a section here with a security warning, and they give you a few options that you can choose. You got 0 through 3, and number 3 is recommended. So we're going to switch that to 3 to restrict the log. And once that's complete, we can scroll down to the bottom of the page and click change. It's a long page. And down here, you'll see change. Click that, and the settings will be saved. So now that it's been saved, it's going to need to restart the system in order for them to actually take effect. So we'll go ahead and click restart. So it looks like it's complete. And now if we go back to the config server security firewall, we'll see the firewall status is enabled and running. And you should be all set to go. And that's the setup for a WHM account on DigitalOcean using a domain name. The next video will show how to set up a WordPress account using this web hosting manager and our new domain that we have here.